I'm Karen Jensen with the Fort Worth Public Library, and I am here today with author Jennifer Ziegler, who is the author of How Not to Be Popular, and a series of books that stars the Brewster triplets, which she's going to talk to us a little bit about. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about being an author. She's from here in Texas, and we do have all of her books available for you in Overdrive. So while you're safe at home, staying safe, you can check all those out and read or listen to them. To help us today with this interview, we have a teenager. Her name is Riley, and she's going to ask Jennifer some questions.
Hi, Riley.
Hi. Okie dokie. So, questions.
I'm ready.
So, you've written both middle grade and YA. What do you have to keep in mind when writing for each of those different age groups?
That's a really good question, Riley. Actually, I try not to keep things in mind while I'm writing because I try not to be too aware that I'm creating the stories. I like to imagine that I'm tapping into this other reality and just sort of setting down what I see. And if I'm too much aware of myself, then I won't get lost in the world of the book. But I do have to, when it comes time to start writing it, when it comes time to really follow an idea, I have to ask myself, who is the main character? And if the main character is an older teen, well, then it's a YA. And if it's a younger teen or someone in upper elementary, then it's middle grade. But usually it's the characters that make that distinction and what they're going through, and it's usually not me. Although when I revise, it's a different story.
Okay. So, could you explain like some of your books that you think would be good to read right now during this quarantine?
Well, hopefully everybody's just open to reading all kinds of things. I tell you what, if people want funny books, this is kind of what I like to read, and it's what I like to write. So my Brewster triplets books, which started with Revenge of the Flower Girls, I think it's an interesting one to read right now, just basically to get lost in a different time. It's set in the now, but it's set in pre-quarantine now. And it has to do with siblings. A lot of people are in a home with siblings. I think you are, Riley. I know my children are holed up with their siblings. And so you can see how these three siblings who are triplets, identical triplets, how they deal with things that life hands them. So there's 4 books, and I would be honored if people read them, especially if they live in Texas or are from Texas, because all of these books are set in Texas. In this one, they are very worried about their older sister and are trying to stop her from getting married. And in the next one, they're having the worst Christmas ever for various reasons. And then if anyone has ever gone camping or tried to go camping, which I did a lot when I was growing up, and which we brought our kids on many camping trips, I wrote Revenge of the Happy Campers. So if you miss the great outdoors, I mean, people hopefully are going into the outdoors, but if you miss sort of your usual like romps outdoors with friends and family, that might do the ticket. And then this is a back to school, Revenge of the Teacher's Pet. So maybe they won't admit it, but some of your readers might miss school. And so this might be something, and you don't have to read these books in order. The order I presented them in is the order they were written, and it is the order that they happen in the triplets' lives, but I don't think you have to read them in order. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, well, pretty good. So a lot of your books, there's a lot of comedy. How do you balance that with also delivering like good messages?
Wow, you're really good with the questions, Riley. Let me think. How do I? I think the humor is just looking at life and not taking things too seriously. I don't like mean humor. I don't like making fun of people, but I think that life can be really absurd. I mean, look at what life can throw at us, right? So we have to be able to laugh at these situations that we find ourselves in. Also, I think people are hilarious. I think families, we tend to just be really hilarious when we're with our siblings and parents and extended family. And so there's a lot of situational humor there. You know, I don't have messages, mainly because when I was reading books, I never wanted to read books that were preaching at me and giving me messages. But that said, I think I do explore questions. I think I do try, for example, in this one, the question is sort of, how far would you go to protect a loved one that you thought was about to make a major mistake? You know, we've all done things to help friends and siblings and family members that we love. And if you really thought that they were about to make a major mistake, and if they were a grown-up sibling, how far would you go? Well, to answer it for these triplets, pretty far. They would do all kinds of things. So that was kind of a question. And sometimes when you read a book about what other people are going through, even when it gets goofy and you know you would never be in that particular situation, you might ask yourself, well, what would I do if someone I loved was about to marry someone that I thought, you know, and I thought that was a really bad idea? What would I say something or would I not? And if I said something, you know, what would I do if I'm not listened to? That kind of thing.
Yeah. You said when you were talking about that you think it's important to laugh right now. Why do you think it's so important for authors to continue writing during this time, even though it may be hard?
It is hard. Oh my gosh. I cheer when I finish a paragraph these days. I think anytime you can write, you're kind of outside of yourself. Especially when you're writing a story, you're in a different place. And that's always fun, because if you feel cooped up, or if you feel worried, anxious, sad, stressed out, if you sit down and disappear into the world of your story, you might feel other things, but you may not feel that. And you can kind of let go of yourself and be caught up in the story of your character. So I think it's very therapeutic. I think authors right now, we can't go visit libraries and schools. We can't go to conferences. We can't go to book festivals, all these things that we do as authors. So we can be writers, because we're sort of two things. We're author and we're writer. And author has us present and help educators when it comes to talking about writing, and explore themes on panel discussions, that sort of thing. But when we are writing, we're usually by ourselves somewhere. So there's no reason why we can't, other than just trying to focus. So that really is the best thing we can do right now.
How much would you say this has affected your writing style?
The quarantine?
Yes.
Well, my routine has been thrown off a little bit, and I can't go to coffee shops to write. I can't meet up with friends to write. So I'm kind of reinventing how I go about my day. And that's been a process. You might have to check in with me in a few weeks to see whether I managed to actually get a new routine. So far, I'm just doing it when I can. And here's a tip. Here's a tip. When it's hard to concentrate, but you need to do something, there's this technique. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And I set my timer for, say, 20 minutes. And I say, I'm just going to write for 20 minutes. So I'll write, and then when my alarm goes off, I stop and I take a 5-minute break, and I might get into a yoga pose. I might go for a brief, stroll down the block and back. I might get a snack. And then I sit down and I set it again, because I feel like anybody can do anything for 20 minutes. And so even if all I do is get a couple of sentences, then after a while I have a good page, and that's a page I didn't have yesterday. So this is good for any kind of project that anybody's working on. Is just make yourself work for 20, 25 minutes and then take a break. Give yourself a little reward. Like, don't go binge watch 7 shows, but give yourself a little reward, a little break, and then do it again. So that's helped me a lot.
So, since you have plenty of time, what have you been reading lately?
Oh gosh, I've been reading all kinds of things. Let me see. It's in the other room. I should have brought it with me. Randy Rebé's book. And I've been reading I read Guts by Raina's new graphic novel. Oh gosh, what else? And then I've been rereading some David Sedaris and reading some poetry to myself, because it's National Poetry Month right now. So I love to read poetry, and I do write poetry, but I don't really share my poetry. I feel like my poetry is just for me. So yeah, I'm wanting something that makes me laugh, hence reaching for my favorite David Sedaris. Again, I like to, I think laughter is good for you. And also, if I wasn't reading something funny, if I was reading something incredibly stressful or incredibly hard to read, I think it might mirror too much what it's like to read the headlines right now. So I love dramatic books. I love books that deal with difficult themes and topics. And I feel like, these are important books too, and every reader is different. But just for right now, especially since it's so hard to focus, I just want to, disappear into a good story. And if it makes me laugh, that's all the better.
And now is definitely not the time to be reading Pandemic.
Well, I was looking at some of the titles. I was looking at World War Z, and I thought, no. And then there's one called Room, about a family that's trapped in a room. I thought, no. I was scrolling through movies thinking Groundhog Day. Well, I'm kind of living Groundhog Day, so no, even though I love it.
For real. Okay. So, Luke, how do you think some of your characters would be doing right now during this quarantine?
Oh, the triplets would be fine because they can dream up any kind of adventure, project, you name it. They would be driving their mother, their father, whoever they're quarantined with, they would be driving them up a wall. And probably their poor dog would be hiding out. But the triplets are very, each one is incredibly smart and focused in their own way and has their own set of skills. But when you combine all three triplets, it's almost like you have this superhero, this force of nature, right? And they get each other, they understand each other so well. And I know a lot of us have that, even when we don't have a twin or a triplet, we can have that understanding with a friend or another sibling. And so together, that sort of energy that happens where it's greater than the sum of its parts, I feel like that would be turned on daily with the triplets. And they would be finding some sort of project, usually saving the world from some injustice or saving their neighborhood or community or whatever. They would have a victory garden. They would be fine. Let's see, my character from How Not to Be Popular, I would be worried about her because she is at the age where she's very embarrassed by her parents. She would rather not be around her parents. It's very important to her. Her friends and her friend group is very important. And so if she couldn't see them, she would be having a difficult time, I think. So I would worry about Maggie from How Not to Be Popular. But I think all my characters are smart and bulldogged and would figure out some solutions to their own problem. All of them don't need adults to sort of swoop in and save the day for them. They will figure things out for themselves.
So you said that you were worried about your character and how not to be popular because she's at the point where she doesn't really want to be around her parents anymore. And I feel like a lot of teenagers are in that same boat right now. So what advice do you have for them?
Oh, they won't like hearing this, but you know what? I think you're just going to have to embrace the fact that you are under the same roof with these people. And here's what we've been doing that might help. So first of all, you can turn the tables because I've been teaching my kids how to make an omelet, how to make quiche, how to make lasagna, things like that. We'll go, what do you want for dinner tonight? We have all the fixings for this, and we have all the fixings for this. Oh, I want to learn how to make this. So I'm teaching them some things that I know how to do. So my daughter in particular turned the tables on me and said, okay, I'm going to show you how to do winged eyeliner. And I'm going to show you TikTok dances and teach you some TikTok. Your parents can learn from you. You can teach them things. She showed me Florence Pugh's Instagram and was talking about all these people she follows on Instagram and why she loves these people. And I let her sort of tutor me on this, and I learned a lot. The other thing is, now's the time to ask questions of your parents and find out things about when they were your age. Well, who were their friends? What did they do for fun? Who did they have crushes on? What famous people, what celebrities did they follow? There was no Instagram probably back then, but we had magazines and other ways of following celebrities. There is an app called StoryCorps, and it's Story, CORPS. And it gives you a bunch of suggested questions, and you can do an interview of anybody. You can interview your sibling, you can interview a parent, they can interview you. And you can have these interviews and you record them on your phone. And then when you're done, you can have it uploaded to the Library of Congress. So it can be archived forever. Because our individual stories are important. Stories are super important. our individual stories are really important. And I think it's really critical to know more about the people that we love and find out what life was like growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever it was. Yeah, ancient history, right? Find out, like, they didn't live through a pandemic probably, but what were some major historical things they went through? So this is something, I think the people element, yes, there's shows we can watch, we can stream, and there are board games and there are puzzles and there's all these great things we can do to sort of pass the time. But now is an opportunity to really sit down and have some interesting talks with the people that are under the same roof.
All right, thank you for answering my questions.
These are great questions. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm back.
Hello.
That was really awesome. You gave us a lot of great answers to some really great questions. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer.
I hope so. It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure.
I'm totally gonna hang up and write down the answer to all the questions about like who I followed and historical events and stuff.
Oh, I hope you do like a StoryCorps or something. Yeah.
I heard someone yesterday who was talking about the fact they said, you know, like right now we're living history, like, because this is going to be a big, huge historical moment. And they said, you know, we're a first person source about, you know, like in the future, they're going to look back and like they recommend like everybody take and like, you know, make a diary or a journal or create art or anything to talk about their feelings and just, you know, be that first person, you know, historical narrative about this time, because in the future it'll be really important. So I like that you guys talked a lot about writing and stuff too. So thank you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think writing is always such a great escape. And yeah, I've been trying to keep a journal as well and write some poetry about all this. And, you know, even if I'm not really pleased with the results, I'm doing it for me. And I'll be so glad years from now, looking back and reading over what I wrote, I'll be so glad that I did it.
Yes, great. All right, well, I just want to thank you very much. And that was really amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was so much fun. And Riley had such fantastic questions.